What is going on, Snooker fans, and welcome to this Snooker Digest episode, one of the last Snooker Digest episodes of this season. The World Championship is very fast approaching. It's less than 4 weeks now until it all starts in Sheffield. And speaking of the World Championship, I do intend to be very active on this channel around the Crucible and around the qualifiers for the World Championship. I do have videos lined up, but if you're new here, do make sure you've subscribed to see that content. And also let me know in the comments if there's any content you specifically want to see in preparation for the World Championship. But no, let's talk about the action on the table last week out in China at the World Open. And Thepchaiya Un Nooh, remember that guy? He's been so poor for so many seasons now. You sort of go back 10 years or so and you're really thinking that what he's achieved now is what he would have achieved a decade ago, winning tournaments, being on sort of the cusp or inside of the top 16. He's always been such an unbelievably naturally gifted player, and his talent has just never transformed to results on the table. And it's always just been that recklessness. His Zhao Xingtong is a little bit reckless, but Thepchaiya is on another level most of the time. But last week was fantastic from him. All week I saw him play against Marco Fu, and he put in a really good performance to win earlier in the tournament. And then you get to the semi-finals, you beat Judd Trump, and you get to the final and you beat Ronnie O'Sullivan, two of the best players you could want to beat in order to win your first proper ranking title. Yes, he won the shootout back in 2019, but he's needed a big tournament win, and last week was exactly that. And the bedrock of the tournament win was his scoring last week. He made 11 centuries across the entire tournament, which is over a third of his season combined tally of centuries. And the most impressive thing, without a shadow of a doubt, is in that final, he's 7-0 against the greatest there's ever been to win your first ever ranking title, your full ranking title, I should say. And at 7-0, he rattles off 3 successive centuries, one of which is a 147, and that was his third 147 of the season. Just underlying what kind of player this is and why it is so surprising that it's taken so long. He's 40 now for him to have done this. There's no way that a player of Thepchaiya's caliber should ever have been sort of in the 50s in the world. He should be amongst the world's elite. And I know there are so many good, talented players at the moment, and obviously there's only a select amount of players who can be inside that top 16. But Thepchaiya should be a lot more consistent than he is, and unfortunately that recklessness is what has held him back. But last week was just a truly fantastic performance. Even that semi-final against Judd Trump, really, really good performance. And then he looks like he missed it when he's got that pink off the spot, essentially to win 6-4. One of the worst misses you'll see on a essentially match ball. But then, a few shots later, he knocks in an unbelievable black. And that is kind of Thepchaiya in a nutshell, capable of the ridiculous. But the ridiculous goes both ways, the ridiculously good and the unbelievably ridiculously bad. Very happy that he got over the line in both the semi and the final. The final from 4-0 down as well. It kind of looked like Ronnie might coast to it. There was talks, they played in the World Championship quite a few years ago, and Ronnie absolutely dismantled him in record time to win in the first round. And it was almost that idea that Thepchaiya was the perfect opponent for O'Sullivan because of the way that he plays. But all credit to him, from 4-0 down, he stuck to his guns, managed to come out of the first session 5-4 ahead. And the second session, look, it's one of the best standards you'll ever see. And I feel like I've said this a lot this season, particularly in finals, where I've said, this is as good as you will see in a snooker final. Again, this standard was right up there. And then let's talk about that other guy in the final, Ronnie O'Sullivan. We have not talked about him all that much this season on this channel, mainly because he's not played in very much. But when he has played, he's not done an awful lot in tournaments. But that all changed last week, didn't it? It's not just the run to the final. It's the 153 break that he made earlier in the tournament, the highest break ever recorded in the history of the professional game. And it was such an effortless break. I remember waking up, I think he was 3-0 ahead, and I had a quick look through the scorecard, and I was like, that can't be right, there must be a typo. And then a little while later, World Snooker posted the break on Instagram, and it's so good. I mean, it's made in record time. It's Ronnie, you'd expect nothing less. But he treated that break as if it was any other century. It was, okay, most of the break was fairly easy. And for a long period, up until I think the 13th red, it looked like he was on for like the true maximum, that the 155 break. It was only when he needed to dislodge the last couple of reds where he knocked the black onto the cushion. But you run out of superlatives, and I've said them all on this channel regarding O'Sullivan already. But, at 50, he is still breaking records. And who knows, the World Championship's coming up. Can he break the final record and become an 8-time world champion? And this tournament is going to do a lot, I think, to change people's perceptions of O'Sullivan when it comes to Sheffield this year. Now, you never, ever write O'Sullivan completely off. But I think if the World Championship started a week ago and we didn't have that performance out in China last week, I don't think O'Sullivan would probably be in my top 8 favourites for the tournament. But you just see that and you think, if that comes together in Sheffield, who knows? Because, let's face it, he didn't play well at all during the tournament last year, and he still got to the semi-finals. Yes, he got absolutely smashed in the semis by Zhao Xingtong, but how many players can play at like 40% of their capacity and still get to a World Championship semi-final? I think the mindset is good, and that's the main thing. I was talking about the mindset even before that 153 break. He just sounded in a very positive frame of mind. And you can tell with Ronnie, when he's doing interviews, what mental state he is in. And last week it seemed very positive. And if he can keep that for the next 3, 4, 5 weeks, who knows what we'll see at the Crucible. But I do think he's playing in it. I think that seems pretty much guaranteed. Now, I thought he was guaranteed to play at the Masters, and he pulled out 2 days before it started. So you can never count that possibility off either. But yeah, if you're a Ronnie O'Sullivan fan, I think that optimism of an 8th world title has just gone up a couple of notches after last week. Of course, disappointing to lose in the final. That's 2 finals this season, 2 losses, 2 close losses as well. Lost 10-9 to Robertson out in Saudi Arabia, and then 10-7 last week. But ultimately, you have to take the positives. And even in a season that has been poor for O'Sullivan standards, not playing in much, and then when he has played, he's lost early quite a lot as well. But, you look at the records he's made. He made 2 147s in a single match out in Saudi Arabia, and now he's gone and made a 153 break. You just cannot ever, ever count this man off. And then there's just one final thing I wanted to talk about, and I rarely like to end my videos on a negative, but this is a little bit of one, and that was the pocket sizes last week again in the tournament. And, we're no stranger to talk about pocket sizes, not only this season, but over the past 2-3 years. And this perception that pocket sizes in tournaments out in China are bigger, well, last week done nothing to alleviate those concerns. They may have been, honestly, without exaggerating, the biggest pockets I've ever seen. And I don't want that to undermine what Thepchaiya Un Nooh achieved. I don't want that to undermine O'Sullivan's amazing 153 break. But it does have to be brought up because some of the balls that went in were criminal. I mean, the black that Thepchaiya knocked in to beat Judd Trump, it's a fantastic pot and it's a fantastic moment. but that is a ball that should never, ever drop in a professional table. I'd be shocked if that dropped in on my local club table, you know. Okay, the angle of the camera is a little misleading, but as soon as he hits it, it always looks near jaw. And then as the black gets close to the pocket, it looks like it's hitting about like 2 inches before the pocket. And yes, it's played at quite a soft pace, but it should never drop. And, you know, there are other examples of balls going in when they really shouldn't ever happen. And, you know, you go back to the UK Championship, and that was when the talk about pockets was pretty huge, and they were saying that was the perfect size. And it'll be interesting to see what we get at the World Championship. The Masters seemed a little more generous than what we got at the UK Championship, and it'll be interesting to see if the Crucible is just as tight as the UK, or whether it's closer to the Masters. But what it cannot be as generous as they were last week, because that does just feel like a little bit of a mockery of the sport. And as amazing as the moments were that we saw, a lot of them actually shouldn't have happened.